Hey guys, K2's Retro Workshop. Today, we're looking in the opposite direction out of this camera. This is typically behind where I film, which is over there. This is a rack that I have in my workshop full of tube gear. The vast majority of it is audio gear, and because it's wintertime and it's cold, I would like to have some glowy hot things going on in the shed. So we're going to be back and forth between computers and some of this tube gear and this restoration. So let's take a quick look at everything in this rack, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do. This is the mechanical section of the reel-to-reel deck that came with this setup. It's going to be iffy as to whether or not this can be brought back to life. It's a Bell unit. This is mechanical, this is the electrical section of it. And the mechanical section is missing some parts. One obvious one is the cover here. That doesn't affect operation. I can 3D print something to cover that. But on the back side, we were missing some stuff too. So I'll have to look in there and see if maybe there's something I can do with that. If not, I do have the mechanical section of an Akai M8, and that is a really nice mechanical section that could pop in here, and I could interface it with the electronics here. On the electronics side, it's not in bad shape. Everything is there. We have broken glass here, which will need replaced. That should be fairly easy. And then the tube system needs gone through. It's going to need some new electrolytics, and the resistors in this are probably going to need to be checked for tolerance because most of them are carbon composition. If you don't know what carbon composition is, you probably don't mess with vintage audio gear very much. Here we have two resistors. The left one here is a carbon composition resistor. It almost looks like a plastic case with leads coming out of it. And then you have your modern like wire wound and metal film. So carbon composition runs into a problem where you get humidity in the, basically they take carbon powder and they press it into a little pill and it goes in here. And the moisture gets in there and affects it. It can crack over time and heat cycles and such, and they tend to go high resistance. So this is not a bad place to look if you're having a problem. And they don't necessarily wholesale need replaced. I mean, I do have a ton of these, and they are within spec. But here in New Mexico, it's dry as heck. I don't even have a filament dryer for my 3D printer because it's never moist enough for it to matter. Except if I take it inside where we run the swamp cooler, and then I got a problem. But anyway, yeah, so it'll need gone through for some of that stuff. Skipping this guy real quick, this is our other source. This is an AM/FM tuner. It doesn't have a switch to choose between AM or FM. It's just two outputs all the time. And we have our tuning dial here. It's kind of sticky and it needs to be worked on. Lubed up and cleaned and such. This should be pretty easy too. I've done AM/FM tube radios before. They're not necessarily more difficult than transistorized radios, but everything is, there's no package components and such. So, you know, it's not bad. We'll take a look at that. This is our source selector. This is pretty cool. I believe it's all passive. I'll have to take it out to verify that. This might be the one thing in this rack that actually has transistors in it. There was one thing here that did, and I believe it was here. But we can do everything here. We've got multiple channels we can bring in. We can select between AM, FM, phono, tape. I believe there's 3 more things you can select over here. And it's got an inner and outer knob setup, so I can actually monitor 2 different inputs without having to change both of them. Stereo reversed for the output. We can monitor B, monitor A, mono B. channel B, channel A, and this is surprisingly cool. This should be a Heathkit unit. These knobs look super familiar for Heathkit. There's a few other things on here that say Heathkit and have indicated to me that these were mostly kits. But yeah, this source selector is cool. I'm going to move this probably up towards the top so it's easier to actually get to. And yeah, I've got to rearrange this deck a little bit. So let's go on to the next device. Here in the rack we have a function generator. I don't particularly have any use for a function generator in this rack. Right 2.5, 3 feet that way, I have a digital function generator capable of megahertz signals if I need them, down to millihertz if I need it that way too. So I've got no problem with function generator stuff in here. So this is probably going to go to make room for something else. We're going to skip this guy for now because we're talking about it last. This is the power amp. This is the preamp for this audio stack. As you can see, we have multiple inputs here that we can select from. The source selector down on the bottom does not have multiple external inputs. It doesn't have any external inputs. It's all from the rear. So this will be nice for, you know, if I want to test a DAC or something like that, I can just plug in here. We can select our source here. There's an upper and lower switch here that I have no idea what does, so that'll be fun to figure out. Balance, volume, bass, and treble controls. We have a lot of tone controls on here. These, like I said earlier, these were probably all Heathkit or similar kits. So we got bass and treble here, bass and treble here, and then on the source down below, bass and treble there. Independent controls down there for each channel. It's nuts. So I'm not necessarily sure that we need that many controls, but we have them, so we'll just leave them in the middle, or you know, whatever. We'll figure that out. This is a DC power supply. There's an adjustment knob here. There's a series resistance knob here, which is kind of cool. We have multiple selections for our voltmeter and current. And I'm not actually sure what the maximum output capability of this is. It ranges all the way up to 100 volts and 5 amps. I'm guessing that's not really what this will do, but I have so many solid-state power supplies and modern power supplies. This isn't really necessary either in the rack, so I don't think it's going to be staying, but I haven't decided. The gauges are so cool looking. So, I don't know. We'll see on that one. And at the top here, we have a DMM. And you can see it's got Heathkit on here. This will register decibels and RMS volts. I have no idea how to actually use this other than turning it on and off, because none of these knobs are labeled. And we've got 6 knobs here, so I don't know what they do. And I really like the Heathkit display here, and I do want to keep this here, but this may have to be changed up so that it can actually be useful in here. I'm more inclined to keep this over this, I believe, but that has yet to be determined. One of these two is going to have to go because I need room for what we're going to talk about next. Here is the audio output amp, the power amp of this whole stack. This is what we're working on first, this section. And I didn't explain it earlier, but the reason that I want to work on the output section first and then go back to the sources is so that I can actually listen to the system while I'm working on it. If I fix the reel-to-reel and then do the source selectors and then go up to the amp, I don't have the ability to tell if anything's wrong with it until I've put it all together, and then I have to troubleshoot an entire system. This way, I can build this up, I can be using it, and then add stuff to it. And if the new device gives me a problem, I know where the problem is. It'll make it a lot easier. It makes it a lot quicker for me to get the system going and useful. And I can replace my 2.1 Logitech system finally. Let's take a brief look at this system. So you can see in here We do have our carbon composition resistors. It doesn't look like any of the high current resistors are carbon comp. We've got a wire wound over here, wire wound here and here. So that's a capacitor actually. Most of this will probably be okay. This looks like a fairly modern cap, so we'll have to see just how good those are. Which shouldn't be difficult to do. So let's turn this around. Get all my wires out of the way. Jeez. Alright. So we're turned around here. This is our power transformer, our rectifier, and our now probably very dry electrolytic capacitors. This is our output transformer. We have two, they're EL84 or 6BQ5 in the States. The ECC83 or 12AX7 in the States again. And we have our input tube. I think this is a 12AT7, if I remember right. So we have quite a bit here. You've got, I think your source selection here, internal, external. That's going to be difficult to use when the rack is installed. So I need to make sure I know what this goes to. Might be internal versus external power output. I don't know. Whatever. I'll figure that out when we actually get to it. This output transformer is not common. So modern listening, modern sources, modern basically everything is stereo. From streaming to everything else. So if I want this to be a useful daily driver replacement system for what I have, I need stereo. I have tried to find this transformer. I cannot find it. So we have a few options here. One of them is to scrap this, build a new stereo system, and be done with it. I don't want to do that because I want this and the rest of the system to be as stock as possible. I don't want to change much of anything if I can avoid it. I want it to be useful, so things may have to change here and there, but I don't want to just throw the baby out with the dishwater and start from scratch, you know. So what I'm going to do is turn this amp into a subwoofer amp. These two tubes and this transformer, we should be looking at between 15 and 20 watts. I have a little 8x12 shed. That should be more than enough. I've got a couple of 12-inch paper cone woofers that I've picked up, and running those on this guy should be a cinch. It should be more than enough to give me bass in here. And so that's what we're going to do with this guy. We will just recap and check some specs and stuff, make sure everything is like it's operating like it's supposed to, and this guy's ready to go back in the rack. My plan is to build a companion amp that will go with this, and it will also be rack mount, but it will be a stereo amplifier with an active crossover and mixer built in. So we will divide the audio signal between our highs and lows at an adjustable cutoff. The stereo lows will be mixed and driven out to this guy, which will go out to the speaker. The highs will go to their respective left and right amps, and then they will go out to their speakers. And I believe that's the best way to approach this so that I don't have to do any mods here. I can leave this as stock as possible, but also still have it useful in the audio stack. And from there, I can move on and build everything else up. Okay, I wanted to make sure I wasn't lying here. I did try to do a search again for this transformer, and I'm not finding it. But I think that that's the best approach for this. It's unfortunate, though, that I have to do that, because if I had another one of these transformers or another one of these amps, it would be done. I could just hook the second amp up. There's even a 500 ohm tap on this transformer, which means I could drive like my 600 ohm headphone cans and such without having to do much of any mods, and that would be pretty sweet. But I wouldn't have to build a dedicated headphone amp as a part of this entire rack either. So, whatever. We'll see. That's the system and what I plan on doing with it. I'm planning on, every time I do one of these, that the section we're working on will be the last piece of the video before it. So we've got this all out of the rack at the end of this video. So the next video will be this guy again. We'll do some testing on it. I'll show you the recap process, and yeah. So that's my winter project. Hope to have this done. We're still going to be doing computer stuff. You can see in the background here the next computer that I'm showing on the channel. It kind of pissed me off, so here we are doing this. Got to shift between projects every once in a while, you know. But the shed's not big enough to have multiple projects out without some of them showing up on other stuff. The Tektronix is on the other side of this guy, and I just got the shed area here cleaned out enough that I can actually work on this bench while the Tektronix is in a position I can actually work on it too. So yeah, we have a lot going on in here. Fortunately, I have a decent vacation coming up, so I will be able to actually get some stuff done out here. It's going to be awesome. And hope you guys enjoy. I hope you guys are interested in this tube gear stuff. If there's anything you'd like me to cover as far as tube gear goes, tube gear is another huge part of my hobby. I love computers, but tubes are kind of what I enjoy doing on my downtime. If I need to relax or something, I like working on this stuff. Everything is discrete. There's no ICs to troubleshoot and stuff like that. So it just makes it so much more calming to work on this stuff, because you can be super analytical about the circuit and you can find the source of your problem, typically. And yeah, I mean, I don't have to desolder anything to test my active components. An example, if this 12AX7 here is giving me trouble, I can throw it in a tube tester, see if it's still good, and if it is, that's not my problem. Find it somewhere else. So yeah, let me know if you have any questions or comments, and have a great day.